turn to Dorothy Skrychek's question to Councillor Holmes on St Mary's Bridge floodgates. Alex?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Dorothy Skrychek's question is, will schools be alerted in circumstances where the floodgates adjacent to St Mary's Bridge are required to be shut due to rising river levels? I don't believe Dorothy's here, so...
Is that correct? No, Dorothy's right. Good. I shouldn't say good, I didn't mean it like that. Brendan Connolly to Councillor Barker on councillor response times.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Brendan Connolly's question to Councillor Barker is, in what timescale should councillors respond to residents' inquiries?
Okay, Mr Connolly, do you have a supplementary? Can somebody confirm that that microphone is working, because I found it very difficult to hear. If there's any technical wizards can make it louder. Right.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I'll speak louder, it might help. I have to give you an insight into the problems I've been having with my local councillors in Cheddar-ston.
No, I'm afraid you can't do that. You can ask a supplementary question.
But that's what it's about.
No, you please do not make a speech. Please give a supplementary question.
So then I've got to be subdued to satisfy you.
No, that is the rule that everybody has agreed to. Will you please ask a supplementary question?
The supplementary question then is included in Councillor McChrystal and Councillor Jennings, who seem to be more interested in pantomimes and collecting money from the War Memorial. But as a resident, am I getting value for money when I've contacted my councillors on the 4th of June and still had no response from those two gentlemen? Why?
Councillor Barker, would you care to respond?
Yes, thank you, Mr Connolly, for the supplementary. Very little detail that you're giving there in relation to...
He stopped me from giving it.
Very little detail there in relation to the supplementary. It's not something that we can deal with in this forum here. If you would like to actually write to me, I will investigate the matter and advise you accordingly.
Okay. One from Simon Bacon to Councillor Pearce on Derby City Council's recycling rate.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Simon Bacon's question to Councillor Pearce is, please could the council provide its recycling rates submitted to DEFRA from 2018-19 to 2020-21?
Councillor Pearce, as Mr Bacon, do you have a supplementary?
I have, yes. Thank you very much. Good evening, Councillor Pearce. It's Recycle Week 2021, so I thought this was a suitable question to put to you. The England recycling rate for 2019-20 was 45.5%, so even then Derby was below average. You've now confirmed a further shocking decline in 2020-2021 to 36.7%. Why has the Derby recycling rate declined to such a degree?
Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Mr Bacon, for your supplementary. Yes, it is Recycle Week. I totally agree with you, and I'm fully behind that. The numbers have dropped because there was a pandemic last year, and it's not an excuse. It is the fact. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one is from Pauline Inwood to Councillor Holmes, Climate Emergency Action Plan, target date. Alex.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Pauline Inwood's question is, when will the Council's Climate Emergency Action Plan be finalised, and what zero carbon date will the Council aim for?
Pauline, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. I was quite surprised that you're not reading out the answers, because the supplementary kind of refers to the answer. I have read the answer, which refers to the 2015 action plan, which is presumably what was referred to. But since the declaration of the emergency in 2019, only this month has there been any apparent attempt to take this any further. Herefordshire County Council declared a climate emergency at a similar time to Derby City Council, Already they have put in place an action plan to accelerate a reduction of their emissions to net zero by 2030. To do this, amongst other things, they are now offering free bus travel every weekend.
I must press you to ask a supplementary question.
Okay, next. Why is Derby City Council taking so long to take actions such as this?
Councillor Holmes.
Thank you for your question. I don't think we are. I think my original answer clearly states that by the end of the calendar year we'll have a plan in draft stage. So we are moving forward.
Thank you. The next one is again from Dorothy Strytek to Councillor Holmes, Rainsway flood evacuation procedures. Alex?
For the record, Mr Mayor, Dorothy's question to Councillor Holmes was what procedures are in place to evacuate residents downstream of Rolls-Royce's Rainsway plant in the event of an industrial emergency? Will the Council object to development proposals at Elveston Castle that may increase flood risk?
Thank you. And as Dorothy's not here, we'll move to the next one, which is from Mayor Perkins again to Councillor Holmes on the use of hydrogen and decarbonisation.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The question is, by how much will Derby's recently announced hydrogen plan reduce carbon emissions, and will it be sufficient to meet legally binding climate targets?
Mr Beavis, have you a supplementary to ask on that? Thank you.
I assume the councillor is aware of the difference between blue and green hydrogen, and that studies have shown that blue hydrogen, which the fossil fuel industry is pushing, is actually dirtier than coal. Can the councillor assure me that the council will only be pursuing green hydrogen?
Councillor Holmes.
Thank you. Well, of course, that's our intention. The whole point about pursuing hydrogen in Derby is to achieve the outcomes of our climate change emergency and our commitment to clean air and the environment. So it's a renewable and readily available source. It's clean and flexible, more powerful in its energy efficiency than fossil fuels, highly efficient, and almost zero emissions is what you're referring to there. The end result of the energy process is generally water as well. So you can see that if we use hydrogen and we pursue that, there's going to be huge benefits. So I certainly hope so.
Thank you. Another from Simon Bacon to Councillor Pearce, restoration of blue bin recycling services.
Mr Mayor, I think we might have skipped a question in the booklet, potentially.
Beg your pardon? Yeah, Brendan Connolly, beg your pardon, to Councillor Atwell, private hire vehicle additional charges. Alex.
Thank you. Mr Connolly's question to Councillor Atwell as Chair of the Licensing Committee is why are private taxi companies allowed to charge an additional £2 after 10 p.m. on Friday, Saturday and Sunday evenings?
Councillor Atwell. You've already given a reply, haven't you? Okay.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
It's Brendan Connolly to ask a supplementary. Thank you.
Mr Chairman, I revert back to my previous question. I contacted the councillor on Saturday the 4th of September. I'm still awaiting a reply. Now, the question to him is, why are Derby residents being ripped off? Because everybody in here has had some kind of hardship. And regarding they can't look after them, they're not in charge of them, they give them their licence. It's wrong. And it's vulnerable people, it's ladies. It's just fundamentally wrong that this council can't do anything about a taxi driver. Oh, I'll like to charge an extra £2 to eat. No, you can do about it. Why?
Councillor Atwell, would you like to respond to that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Connolly, I've already given that answer. We don't unfortunately set the fares. It's down to the private hire operators who regulate what they want to charge. So, I mean, if you've got any individual issue with any individual company, I suggest you get in touch with the company involved. Because realistically, it's not a matter for Derby City Council or a council to get involved in because the rates aren't set by us. Well, thank you for the question.
Mr Chairman, can I just finish and say thank you very much, but I think this is the worst cabinet that I've ever come across asking questions.
Thank you, Mr Connolly. The one I did mention before, Simon Bacon to Councillor Pearce on the restoration of blue bin recycling services. Alex.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Simon Bacon's question to Councillor Pearce is what action has the Cabinet member taken to reinstate blue bin collections in areas where the service has been removed due to contamination issues?
Mr Bacon, have you a supplementary?
course. It's just good to be back, isn't it? Councillor Pearce. On the 30th of January 2020, Environmental Information Response 13835 confirmed that after the original reintroduction promotion was carried out, there were no further plans at that point to carry out further promotion of the returning blue bin scheme. Do you agree that, noting the city's shocking collapse in recycling, that almost 2.5 years after its reintroduction, it's time to carry out a further blanket promotion of the blue bin scheme in the affected streets where the service was returned to?
Councillor Pearce.
Simon, it is good to have you back. Yes, I totally agree with you, and you'd be surprised that I'm saying that, but no, I totally agree with you. I had a meeting with the street pride officers last Friday, and plans are in place to reintroduce, or to try and reintroduce, the blue bin scheme to the areas that you wish. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Item 7 is questions relating to the Derbyshire Fire Authority at Derby Homes. I understand none have been received. Item 8 is the questions from non-council cabinet members, and there are 17 in total. That might have changed. I think there's a couple have been amalgamated. Yeah, the first one is from Councillor Prosser to Councillor Smale on raw sewage in rivers. Alex.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Prosser's question is, what action is the council taking to prevent the discharge of raw sewage into the River Derwent around Rainsway?
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Prosser? No, thank you. We'll move on then. The next one is from Councillor Carr to Councillor Smale on the responsible use of fireworks. Sally.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Carr's question is, how are the resolutions made by Council in November 2020 relating to awareness and publicity of fireworks displays and their effects on animals and vulnerable people being implemented?
Councillor Carr, do you have a supplementary? You can use your own microphone. Yeah. Oh. There's one on its way.
All right, thank you very much. Yes, in the original resolution, the third article asked this council.
Sorry, we didn't hear that. Can you say it again?
In the third article in the original resolution, asked this council to write to the Secretary of State asking for an increase in. Has that been done?
Thank you, Councillor Carr. I can't honestly know that answer to me right now. I'd like to say that officers have been away and helped write that letter to send to central government, but I can't hand on heart say that's correct at the moment. But what I will do is have those conversations with council officers, and I'll just liaise with you for then. Okay, thank you.
The next two are from it's an amalgamated question from Councillor Skelton to Councillor Ralston on Alice Street Golf Course and councils consulting Historic England. Alex.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Skelton's questions are, what was the council's response to Historic England when approached about Alice Park Golf Course being designated Grade 2 listed status, and who was consulted?
Councillor Skelton, because there were two questions, you can have two supplementaries if you wish to.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To the first one, so are you saying no discussions, no communications whatsoever since you were notified in January, or are you saying there were comments made but not regarding any recommendations?
Councillor Ralston.
No comments made at all that I've been made aware of, and have confirmed that with officers.
Thank you. Do you have another one, Councillor Skelton?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. And to the other one, so which people decided not to give a response?
Councillor Ralston, can you respond?
The officers made that decision. There was no legal requirement to make a response. It was put forward by a member of the public. We did not wish to interfere in giving a response that would be seen to be preferable of any individual case. So I presume that was why that decision was made.
Thank you. Councillor Bonser to Councillor Webb on care home staff. Alex.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Bonser's question is the Cabinet member concerned about the impact the requirement for care workers to be fully vaccinated will have on meeting the needs of care home residents, and what advice is the Council providing to care homes who are facing staffing shortages?
Councillor Bonser, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor. Given that the Councillor acknowledges that recruitment is and has been an ongoing issue, can he confirm that this matter will be kept under constant review, as safe staffing levels must be a priority for our vulnerable people, and 90% of a depleted workforce may well still present a significant risk?
Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Councillor Bonser. Yes, we have got over 90% of care home staff that are vaccinated, and yes, it will be a risk if those that are not vaccinated actually deal with care. But within the new legislation, there is a provision for reasonable adjustment of those care staff so they can be redeployed where they do not need to have direct access to those residents. That is being kept constantly under review as I view the safety of residents a particular interest of mine, and it's on the register of interests that I am chairman of a care home committee of a local charity, and I'm proud to say that we have 100% compliance with our staff, and I hope that between now and November the 11th, when the date is for the new legislation to come in, that 90% of vaccination, double vaccination, is going to be closer to 100. I would like to see it 100%.
Thank you, Councillor Webb. Councillor Repton to Councillor McChrystal on City Centre swimming pool.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Repton's question is, what progress has been made by the administration to provide a centrally located swimming pool once Queen's Leisure Centre closes?
Councillor Repton, your supplementary.
Yes, I see from the answer that the consultation closes in 3 weeks' time. Moorways will open in 6 months' time, and that's when Queen's is planned to close. So a strategy is all well and good, but where is the commitment and budget line to ensure a centrally sited pool remains in the city? There isn't one, and that means tens of thousands of people in the city will be denied easy access to a pool. It's a scandal, it's a shame, it's certainly a situation that would not have happened under our administration, and I think we require more than paying for a commission report, which will kick us into the long grass. The people of Derby want action on this, not prevarication.
I think you've asked your question, Councillor Repton. Councillor McChrystal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Repton, as you know, we're currently in the middle of a public consultation. You may predetermine the decision making that follows a public consultation. I, however, will not.
Thank you. Next one is from Councillor Dinser to Councillor Smale on the anti-slavery charter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Dinser's question is, what progress has been made on the implementation of the 10 points of the anti-slavery charter?
Councillor Dinser, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Smale, for your response and the progress. Are you able to confirm when exactly the date will be for the annual report for the anti-slavery recommendations?
Councillor Smale.
Thank you, Councillor Dinser. I can't give you that right at the moment, but I'll be happy to pick that up after full council and have those conversations with you then. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Shanker's question to Councillor Ralston is, can the Cabinet Member provide reassurance that strategic oversight of the Council's finances is in capable hands?
Councillor Shanker, do you have a supplementary?
I do, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Ralston, for acknowledging the responsibility lies with the Cabinet and taking that responsibility seriously. But would you agree with me then, given the vast overspend being predicted for this current financial year, the depletion of reserves, the predicted black hole in future years' budgets, the failure to bring back the Beckett-Well business case for scrutiny as promised by the leader, millions wasted on the aborted Assembly Rooms refurbishment, millions being pumped into a shut-down incinerator, your own howler at Cabinet just 2 weeks ago forgetting 25 million was borrowed for the A52 and trying to blame that for the depleted reserves. You're actually making a really poor job of managing this council's finances.
Councillor Olsen, I think that was a question.
In short, no, I do not agree with you, Councillor Shanker. There are a number of issues that you've highlighted there, many of which you have had the answer to on numerous occasions. And if there, from our perspective, you know, we face the challenges as they arise. Any conversations that we need to have out of this room, I'm more than happy to take that directly one-to-one.
Okay, the next one is from Councillor Peatfield to Councillor Smale on incinerator costs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Peatfield's question is, how is the Cabinet member... Sorry, my mistake. Councillor Peatfield's question to Councillor Smale is, what is the latest cost to date to Derby City and Derbyshire County Councils in respect of the closed Derbyshire Waste Treatment Centre, and what is the predicted final cost likely to be?
Councillor Peatfield, supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sintering residents living near the incinerator have enjoyed 2 glorious years of smell-free and fly-free homes. Can you please put their minds at rest once and for all and confirm that you will not reopen the incinerator?
Councillor Smale.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Peatfield, I can't predetermine the course of action that's currently being taken at the moment. We're going through the estimated fair value, and until that's been resolved, until we know what the current state of the plant is in, we can't make a predetermined decision. As we know, we're not in an ideal situation, but I will just say this, there's no way that whilst you might have a different view of that not having it running right now, but what the current process that we're going through right now, if you was under this administration, you'll be still taking the same route. The estimated fair value is always going to happen regardless if the plant's running or not. So stop trying to pull the wire or cotton wool over people's eyes to say that we'll stop the plant. You progress with this plant just as much as other administrations, rightly or wrongly, have done. So why don't you come clean to the public and admit that you're just as equally wrong in this project?
Next question is from Councillor Prosser to Councillor McChrystal on council-operated cafes in parks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Prosser's question is, why are council-operated cafes in the city's parks still operating a reduced service?
Councillor Prosser, do you have a supplementary?
You suggest here that Elveston Park Cafe is operating the way it is due to government restrictions. That's what the answer says. Normal cafes everywhere across the city are operating perfectly normally at the moment. So have I misread the answer to this question, or is there a real reason why it's offering a reduced service at the moment?
Councillor Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, you haven't misread the answer at all. But to supplement that, I will just add as well that we just have undergone a strategic catering review. That was complete on the 17th. So I've got every confidence that DCC catering assets are going to bounce back with improved service, some delicious snacks and treats for you to look forward to, and they will all be fully optimised. So just as some reassurance for you, Councillor Prosser.
Thank you. The next one is from Councillor Martin to Councillor Williams on catch-up funding.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Martin's question is, what progress has been made implementing the requirements of a resolution passed at the July Council meeting relating to school catch-up funding?
Councillor Martin, do you have a supplementary?
I do, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Williams for writing to the Secretary of State as all councillors unanimously supported that resolution. So thank you very much for taking that action. There were 2 other points in the resolution, one being to urge the Secretary of State to develop a 5-year strategy for pandemic recovery in education, and secondly, to collect information from schools in the city on how many children receive catch-up funding and in what form. And so I'd like to ask Councillor Williams what progress has been made on those 2 aspects of the resolution. Thank you.
Councillor Poulter, I understand you're going to answer on behalf of Councillor Williams.
I can, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Just firstly to apologise on Councillor Williams' behalf. She's currently at home, thankfully, recovering well from serious surgery, so otherwise she would be here. And as has been alluded to, she has written to the new Minister and she has written to the new minister with a view to following up exactly that, to look to promote a 5-year plan in terms of recovery. I'm looking at the question and I can't see any reference in there to asking the schools, doing a survey of the schools. But if you want to talk to...
so that was in the original resolution.
Oh, right. There's no reference in the question. Okay.
That's my supplementary question.
Okay. I'm sure Andy Smith and Yvonne will have an answer in relation to progress on that. I'll arrange for it to be supplied to you, or you can contact Andy Smith directly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Poulter, and I think the whole chamber will send their good wishes to Councillor Williams for a speedy recovery. Councillor Dinser to Councillor Pearce on compactor days.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Dinser's question is, when will compactor days resume across the city in response to increasing levels of fly tipping?
Councillor Dinser, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Pearce, for your response. You state that compactor days are still available to neighbourhood boards. I agree with you, they are. However, the question was more about why there's been a reduction in bulky waste collection. Because if I give the example of Normanton Ward, we were very good in using bulky waste collection, but it was made very good on the basis that the City Council relevant department was match funding, more than match funding, our contributions from a neighbourhood board, which meant that residents were able to send out more bulky waste off our streets and the waste. So that is the question. The neighbourhood boards can do exactly what you said. However, this has been curtailed by the fact that the relevant departments are not able to continue to find funding to help us get bulky waste off our streets through the collections. Is there any plans for you to consider reinstating those sort of fundings for the relevant departments so that we can maximise bulky waste collection?
Councillor Pearce.
Councillor Dinter, thanks for the other question. If you'd asked the question initially, I'm sure we would have had some response to it from the officers, but your question was regarding compactor days in the original question. But I will get back to you on that one. Thank you.
Okay. Next one's from Councillor Peatfield to Councillor Holmes on decarbonisation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Peatfield's question is, how is the Cabinet member prioritising decarbonisation within his portfolio responsibilities?
Councillor Peatfield, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do. Can we now hope, Councillor Holmes, that with the newly stressed importance on decarbonisation in your portfolio, that you may take it more seriously, act faster, and maybe start attending some climate meetings?
Councillor Holmes.
Thank you. Last point first. You know me. I don't want to impose. I think that I'm happy to come along, or virtually, or in person, if you want me there. But I'm keen not to impose my will as a Cabinet member on the good work of the group. And that's the honest answer. That's why. Arm's length. But if you want me to be more involved, I certainly will be. I'm content with the work underway. I'm happy with the progress being made, and I believe that the majority of the public are also supportive of the approach that I and this administration is taking.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes. The next one is from Councillor Prosser to Councillor Webb on the Council's response to COVID-19 policies.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Prosser's question is, what plan does the Council have to mitigate pressures in healthcare and the economy, as well as possible civil unrest and further lockdowns arising from the government's COVID-19 policies?
Councillor Prosser, do you have a supplementary? No, thank you. The next one is from Councillor Martin to Councillor Rawson on the social care budget.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Martin's question is, has the 3% council tax precept for adult social care agreed in February 2021 been added to social care budgets for this year?
Councillor Martin, do you have a supplementary?
Not surprisingly, Mr. Mayor, I do. Thank you very much. I'm actually quite surprised at the answer to this question, because I would expect it just to be a simple yes instead of the rather obfuscating answer I have been given. But my supplementary is that the Prime Minister has just announced a more than 10% tax increase on jobs and on working people to pay for health and social care. Does the Cabinet member anticipate much of that money coming to Derby to pay for social care in the next few years? Or does the Cabinet member think it will go to propping up the NHS after 11 years of Tory underfunding of the NHS? Thank you.
Councillor Ralston.
Thank you for the question. I don't anticipate anything at the moment. We have to wait and see what the government give us into support of the city, and we will continue to lobby for the support that the city requires.
Okay, Councillor Dinser to Councillor Pearce on pavement repairs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Dinser's question is, what is being done to improve prioritisation and planning for pavement repairs in Normanton Ward and other areas of the city?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Pearce, for your reply. You state that Symphony Lane micro asphalt repair has been completed. I don't know if I'm missing something here, but the last email exchange I had with the officers, which was the day before the implementation, saying that it was not suitable for micro asphalt and it will be deemed for other repairs. And when I asked for what would be the alternatives, another officer was supposed to respond to me, and I've not had any response. So I'm a bit confused with your response to my question, which isn't in line with what I have heard about micro asphalt not being suitable, and that only being concluded 1 or 2 days before it was going to be implemented.
Councillor Pearce, do you have a response to that?
Can I take this offline, Councillor Dinser? If you want to send me an email with all the details that you sent in to the officers, and I'll investigate that for you. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last one is Councillor Martin to Councillor Webb on empty homes assistance loan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Martin's question to Councillor Webb is, can the Cabinet member justify a recent decision to grant interest-free empty homes assistance loans to private homeowners to convert empty properties into houses in multiple occupation?
Councillor Martin, supplementary.
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. You know, surely in the answer to this one, the Cabinet member is at risk of stimulating, and here I've got to give apologies to Genesis, but get him in by Friday, housing market, with as many folks as possible squeezed into one building. Why not at least consider charging interest to a private property developer of a high note, as this, after all, is public money that is being given out in these loans? Thank you.
Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. As you know, I am passionate about increasing the standards of properties that we have within the city. And with these loans, these are for empty properties that may be in the ownership of people who may not be able to deal with the renovation work that is required. We have several options with these. We can leave them and allow antisocial behaviour to continue. We can work with the owners, be they private owners, be they landlords, be they landlords that are looking at houses in multiple occupation, and we can give loans. But those loans will only be given if we are looking at improving the standards. We are not here just to give money away. You rightly say this is public money, and that public money would be used to and will be used to improve the standards of housing across the city. The final option that we have is to purchase those properties, and I have been purchasing on a regular basis empty homes across this city and improving those, adding those to our social housing stock, and making sure that residents have good quality housing by taking poor quality housing, empty housing out of the housing market and improving the standards across the city.
Thank you, Councillor Webb, and that concludes the questions. Next item of business is a minute extract from a meeting of the Licensing Committee held on the 16th of September 2021. The minute is recommending that the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1982, remember it well, is re-adopted within the Council Constitution to allow a revised street trading policy to be developed. I've agreed to accept this as a late item and allow the 12-week consultation process to be undertaken expediently, and so that the new policy can be recommended to the Council by the Licensing Committee before the 1st of April 2022. Councillor Atwell, congratulations. I understand your good lady's put up with you for 30 years today, and should you feel you need to leave the chamber before the crucial votes, I'm sure everybody would be quite happy to understand that. But as chair of the Licensing Committee, will you move the recommendation, please?
Yes, Mr. Firstly, thank you for on this much considered late item. Last Thursday evening, the Licensing Committee considered a report setting out the need for the Council to review and update its process for dealing with street trading consents. And I'm pleased to report that all members of the committee intend to support this. So yes, move the printed, please.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Skelton. Anybody wish to speak on it? Okay, those in favour? Anybody against? That is carried. Okay. Item 9 is the Local Government Boundary Review. Now consider a report relating to the Council's forthcoming submission to the Local Government Boundary Commission, who will be undertaking a review of the city's electoral arrangements over the next 18 months. Councillor Barker, as the Cabinet Member for Governance, would you introduce the report and move the recommendations for debate, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council, you will be aware, as the Mayor has just said, that this came to the Council in June of this year, and the Local Boundary Commission are seeking to alter the arrangements or to increase the size of the arrangements for the local council over that period of time. There are two main factors involved in this. Part one is the council's size, and part two then will be warding patterns to try and alleviate peaks and troughs in the number of electors in wards, and take into account the increase as well in population as we move forward. It's 20 years since we last had one of these reviews, and it may well be 20 years before we get another one. And so therefore it's a prediction as much as anything else. One of the things that they asked for, and it was necessary to get it into the Commission early, was a draft paper relating to our views, or the Council views, on council size. Now, we weren't able to bring that before full council because it didn't work in with the diaries at the time. But what did happen was that officers carried out a thorough investigation of all the council's functions, put together a paper, and actually put that before the leaders of the respective parties for a draft proposal to go to the Commission. Mr. Mayor, since that has been submitted, the publication of the agenda papers last week put the full paper in here for full council to look at today. That said, the Local Boundary Commission have written back and provided initial feedback on the draft submission made by the council. The Commission have advised that if the council favours an increase in council size, then the preferred number of councillors should be specified in that submission. You will, council members, you will look at, if you look at page 32 of this considerable evidence, you will note that taking into account a whole different level of matters, we did put forward a proposal whereby there would either be 54 or 57 councillors. In other words, an increase of 3 or 6, as the case may be. So, or 4, as the case may be. So, in view of the Commission having felt that that was a strong case, that they wanted us to actually confirm one way or the other, bearing in mind that the median for a council of our size throughout the country is in the region of 56.5. Well, we can't have half a council, and so therefore it is proposed that we amend this document to 2.3 to say the council favours 57 councillors, and that is based on the fact that we are taking forward the numbers of potential residents over a considerable period of time, and recognition of the fact that the median for councils of our size, or our population, in actual fact have 56 or 56 and a half councillors. That's the median. And so therefore, in moving the recommendations, can I ask that we amend 2.2, or the council amends 2.3, sorry, in favour of 57 councillors, and to request that if approved, the Director of Legal Procurement and Democratic Services amends the draft proposal accordingly prior to the final submission going in, which has to be in by very early October. The document is very considerable in length, and I'm sure that everybody's read every page of it, and so therefore I'm not going to go into the great detail of it. The main factors are there is 2.1 to 2.3 in relation to the recommendations, and as I say, with that proviso that we amend 2.3 to actually say 57 councillors moving forward. I move on those grounds, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Barker. Is it seconded? Councillor Poulter, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right? Councillor Shanker.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to, as Councillor Barker says, thank officers involved in this submission. It was a considerable amount of work needed with very tight deadlines, and a lot of work to pull that together has happened. So thank Alex and Mick and his teams for getting that in. I agree with Councillor Barker, particularly with the recommendations in the report, but also with the additional clarification that we need to give following the request by the Boundary Commission. We support the proposal to move to 57. It avoids having a home council at 54. That can't be a good thing. But also, these reviews, as Councillor Barker said, don't come around very often. It's 20 years since we had the last one, and these figures will put us in line with comparator authorities. One point I will make now, and hopefully we can discuss a future meeting with the Minority Administration in Control supporting this. This is an opportunity, as the Boundary Commissioner has said himself, for us to move to whole council elections and 4-year electoral cycles, and if we do that early on in this process, it gives the Commission more flexibility in determining not just the size of wards, but the number of councillors that would represent each ward. It's something which I hope we can bring back to the next full council meeting and get the necessary support to move forward. It's something the public in Derby overwhelmingly showed support for, 82%, if I recall the number right from the last consultation. It will save money for a council which is strapped for cash, and it will allow longer term planning and strong leadership of this council, which is needed in these difficult times. So we're happy to support the amended recommendations in this report to allow this process to move forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Skelton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My group also support the actually clarifying the number at 57. So obviously we have we have definitely then decided. Obviously the Boundary Commission has wanted us to do that. have to take exception with some of the comments that Councillor Shanker's made about the moving to elections only once every 4 years. That is a separate issue. We've already decided that twice now at the council over the past few years, and I think the view has been quite clearly made that the council's decided not to go down that way. Now we're actually in the process of having a boundary review. Personally, I think it's just muddying the waters, so we just need to get on with the boundary review. There's enough work to be done with that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other speakers before I go to the seconder? Councillor Prosser.
So, Reform Derby, we're not happy with the Cabinet's analysis of the situation. We've actually made our own submission. Talks are already underway and around the city as part of the local government reorganisation. This is not some distant pie in the sky any longer. Boundary review now will simply be overwritten when this council is replaced and superseded in the near future. To put our heads in the sand and pretend this is not happening is to waste millions of pounds of taxpayers' money. Now is not the time for the review. In a recent council report, only 1/3 of councillors are reported to have made use of member services. For those that don't know, member services is the go-to assistance team for councillors. We clearly have councillors who are not actively participating in the role, which suggests we have more than maybe we need. There are 42 councillors here who attend meetings, collate reports, vote, suggest and harass this council, whose work regularly gets filed under bin. In the last full council alone, a motion was passed by majority vote that was instantly filed in such a manner. If a full council motion can be brought, passed by majority vote and completely ignored, then what kind of scam are we running? The Conservative leadership stood on a promise of democracy just a few years ago, yet have ignored that promise and betrayed the election. Installing more powerless councillors at great expense cannot possibly change this or benefit the city. Finally, the boundary review report is completely anonymised and therefore cannot be scrutinised or questioned. I don't like being led blind, so I did my own research. I took 2 councils who have undergone reviews in the last 5 years with conclusions that their electorate to councillor ratios are acceptable. To match the first council, Derby City Council would have to raise the number of councillors by Derby City Council would have to cut the number of councillors by 25%. Yet the boundary review says our ratio is out of sync. The second council, well, surely that's different. No, to match the second council I researched, Derby City Council would require a cut of 39% in councillor numbers, and that would be easily achievable and would save millions. In conclusion, a raising councillors does not serve the people of this city, but the power-crazed egos of this city's leadership, whereas a drop in councillors would save millions and have no effect on the operation or effectiveness of this council. We should slash councillors from 3 in each ward to 2, which would improve service and vastly reduce overheads. This would put us on a level with other councils and be the responsible choice of a strong leadership.
Thank you, Councillor Prosser. Councillor Kerr.
It makes me worried about on two angles from what we've just heard. One is the assumption that councillors are not able to do their own casework and answer the questions that are put to them. And secondly, we have had a question tonight from a member of the public who has said, my councillor is not replying. In fact, 2 of his councillors were not replying in a timely manner. That suggests to me that there are councillors who are receiving more queries than they are capable of replying to, and we actually may need additional councillors. Now, when I was first elected, I was elected to the county council, and at that time there were 64 councillors between the county and the city representing the people of Derby. We increased that when we became not when we became a unitary, but when we became a unitary we were 44, and we increased that to the 51 we currently have. Going up to 57 with a significantly increased population for Derby, we are still less in terms of the representation of the city than we were back in 1993 when I was first elected. I don't think that we are underrepresenting the people of Derby by saying we need more councillors. Overrepresenting the people of Derby when we say we need more councillors. Perhaps you don't get any casework because nobody knows you're there. I do.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, just to reiterate our thanks for the comprehensive and detailed work that's gone and research that's gone into this, to provide a report for the Boundary Commission, which they have openly congratulated us for. And the conclusion of that on their behalf is that there's strong evidence in this submission to warrant an increase in the number of councillors in the city, possibly up to 57. That said, this is a two-phase thing. This is firstly to consider the size of the council, and then to look at the boundaries and review the ward layouts. So I don't want to preempt that, any consultation on that. It's a massive consultation with the members of the public, so I don't want to preempt by saying 57, but on the face of the evidence we've got today, that looks like where we're going. So I'm content with the report and content with the slight change to make it read 57. And then I just have to go on from there to the contribution from Councillor Prosser. Well, it's just strewn with inaccuracies and fallacies and fantasy and whatever. At the end of the day, you talk about it's the wrong time to conduct a review. Councillor Prosser, we don't get a choice in when these reviews take place. The Boundary Commission come and tell us when they're coming, what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. So that's one of the inaccuracies that you're trying to put before Council tonight. And Derby's not unique. Derby is a city, and our members, all the members, are ones who want to absolutely represent their residents to the best of their ability. And if the average ward size across the country is something like 11,000 for 3 members to represent, to be able to do that properly, then why would we be able to sync with that? We want the ability to be able to represent the members of this city, the residents of this city, to the best of our ability. So the decision at the end of the day is not ours. We can make recommendations. We will, as we've done here, make recommendations. We'll make recommendations in respect of phase 2 of this review. But the decision on the size, the shape, and the order of the council is that of the Boundary Commission. That said, Councillor Shanker refers to the issue of potentially looking again at this, the political election system for the city in terms of potentially going to all-out elections. He, as he rightly says, has had a discussion with me about that on the basis that this Boundary Commission report will be dealt with at this council in 2023 at the AGM, and at the moment they are conducting the review on the basis that we have taken previous decisions to remain at thirds. Councillor Shanker spoke to me, and I've made sure it's in this contribution to the Boundary Commission, that there is the potential for us to bring back to the council a proposal to move to all-out elections. And for me, there's a lot of issues there, but if we're going to be in all-out elections in 2023, then why would we not reconsider all-out elections for that time and avoid repeated all-out elections in the future and confusion and whatever. So I'm content to speak to Councillor Shanker and any other parties in the city about the potential for bringing another motion to council in November to reconsider the case for all-out elections, because the Boundary Commission needs certainty about what we're going to do, because potentially it could affect their decisions. And as Councillor Barker points out, this is a decision, one in a lifetime, or 1 in 2 decades probably, so we need to get it right. We'll have those conversations, Councillor Shanker, and we'll see what happens in November. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Barker, you have the right to reply.
Nothing further to add, Mr. Mayor. If we could move to the vote, please.
We'll move then to the vote. The proposal as amended by its own proposer to the 57 figure. Those in favour? Those against? That is carried. Thank you. Item 10 is constitutional amendments. It's an item of business, a report proposing alterations to the Council's Code of Conduct in accordance with recommendations from the Local Government Association, the LGA, as well as constitutional amendments relating to hearings conducted under the Council's standards procedures. Councillor Shiraz Khan, understand that the Model LGA Code of Conduct to which these recommendations relate has previously been considered by the Standard Committee. Will you move the recommendations, please?
Yeah, I will, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for allowing. Just a couple of points that I've received queries about, and that is about the reduction in the gifts and hospitalities that we receive from £100 to £50 before we have to declare it, and also to declare directorships unpaid or otherwise to the council. The most significant change, as far as we're concerned, is the formation of a hearing sub-panel, which will hear complaints that progress to a hearing level, and the members of that sub-panel will be made up from the Standards Committee, and this, I believe, helps the monitoring officer in terms of being flexibility. Should there be a complaint against one of the Standards Committee, or one of the Standards Committee members happens to be complaining. So there is very little more to add to it. There will be briefing sessions available for all councillors in the next few weeks, and I move the report as printed. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Atwell, thank you. Do you wish to speak or reserve your right?
No.
Thank you. Any other speakers? In which case, okay, Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've just noticed in Appendix 4, it says that that committee will be appointed by the monitoring officer. Is that democratic?
Councillor Shiraz Khan, do you want to respond to that?
I believe that the Standards Committee is still the overall committee that rules. The sub-committee doesn't supersede it in any way, but this was brought in purely if there was a complaint against one of the members of the Standards Committee, and obviously we can't hear a complaint against ourselves, right? So it was that, whilst it's not democratic, it's something that's been happening in licensing for a very long time, and it works. And I think in this instance, the monitoring officer will decide whether one or two members of that committee are suitable to be on the sub-panel.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other speakers? Okay, Councillor Atwell, do you wish to say anything further?
No, just move to the vote, please.
Do you wish to sum up, Councillor Khan?
No, I think you've had enough for me for tonight. Just move to the vote.
Wouldn't dare reply. Move to the vote then. Those in favour, please show. Any against? That's carried. Okay. Item 12 is the annual report of the overview and scrutiny. Beg your pardon? Oh, missed one again. I was up very early this morning. Okay. That one. I thought that's what we'd just done. Oh, right. Okay. Sorry, I'm getting lost. I was raising flags at 8 o'clock this morning, and it's been fairly relentless. Item 11, then, annual report of the Standards Committee. Councillor Khan, will you move the report?
I move it as printed, Mr. Mayor.
Seconded. Councillor Atwell, thank you. Those who wish to speak, Councillor Ingle, did you wish to? Any other speakers? Move to the vote. Those in favour?
Yes.
That's carried. Thank you. Apologies for my haste. Item 12, the annual report of the overview and scrutiny 2021. It summarises the activity of the Council's 6 scrutiny boards over the previous municipal year And Councillor Repton, as Chair of the Executive Scrutiny Board, will you present a report to the Council, please?
Yes, I'd like to move the report as printed, Mayor. Mr Mayor, this report includes a summary of the roles and responsibilities of overview and scrutiny, the work undertaken over the past year and the various outcomes that have been achieved. It's been a busy year for councils and scrutiny boards, examining a broad range of topics and services as well as their impact on the city and its residents. Some of the topics scrutinised were looked at in depth and the outcomes are highlighted in the report. I'd like to thank all those councillors and officers involved in making sure it's been a very busy but a very productive year. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Thank you. Councillor. Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Nature, do you wish to speak?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Repton, do you...
Just to move the report as printed, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, those in favour? Any against? That is carried. Okay, that moves now to item 13, which is the first notice of motion on access to Rainsway Household Waste Recycling Centre, to be moved by Councillor Dinser and seconded by Councillor Bonser. Councillor Dinser.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Members of the Council, Derby City Council staff, we all agree, do a great job in serving the people of Derby and tackling environmental crimes such as fly tipping, litter and antisocial behaviour. They work hard. However, they are not helped by the current administration's policies and leadership to do this effectively. Despite all the hard work of the officers, the problem of fly tipping and keeping our neighbourhoods clean and green is being hampered by over £570,000 worth of cuts to Rainsway Household Waste Recycling Centre. If you are in a poor neighbourhood, can't access online services, or are a new tenant who can't pre-book a visit to the recycling centre, it has been made very difficult to recycle and remove bulky waste and general household rubbish successfully and easily. Rainsway Recycling Centre is not being allowed to open and provide a service to its full capacity. Opening hours are still not back to the pre-pandemic levels, which were 8 AM to 6 PM, Monday to 7 days a week, except Christmas, Boxing Day and New Year. And there was no pre-booking, especially not online. Current opening hours are Saturday to Monday 8 till 6 PM, Tuesday to Friday 1 till 7 PM. Whilst during COVID-19 it was not necessary to reduce access and distancing, it is not necessary any longer. As the chair of the Community Scrutiny Review Board, I commissioned a report on opening hours and fly tipping. Slots and opening times have been increased progressively, as reported in that paper, from May 2020 to July 2021. Now, 2,592 slots with 12 visits limit per household is available. 99% of available slots are booked. The report states that the whole capacity was being increased. That whilst the whole capacity was increased, fly tipping was still rising. Most fly tipping is proactively removed. However, I do not agree with the officer's report that this means there is no correlation between fly tipping and operation of household waste recycling. I believe, and the Labour Group believes, the capacity and the obstacles of online pre-booked slots is deterring many still not to use the site and go elsewhere, or fly tip. Many examples of this are made aware to me and to the officers in my ward, and I'm sure across the city. And more reports are coming forward where unhygienic piles of rubbish, fly-tipped, attracting rats and pungent smells are reported by neighbourhoods and residents across the city. Yes, there is a national and regional trend of increased fly tipping by a significant number of households and businesses. One example recently was of a 20-plus bags being fly tips in Normanton Ward from a contractor who commissioned the work or took the work from somebody in Chaddesden. It is a fact that it is happening more in Derby despite the national increase in fly tipping. Figure 14 of the report that was commissioned by me clearly shows the percentage cost of removing fly tip waste in Derby City has increased by 37%, which is greater than the East Midlands average of 21%. Our estimated clearance for 2021 cost £334,000 and £851, nearly equal those of the whole of the county of Derbyshire at £346,763. How can this be when we are only a quarter of the population size of the county? Rainsway recycling waste constitutes many problems for our residents. Only today, Evertwig from Sunny Hill emailed me to say that fly tipping and other messes in the area is getting out of control and still increasing. We know many people, because of the booking arrangements, go to other recycling centres where there's no booking and reduction in access, to Ashbourne, to Burton, to Ilkeston. Those are people who have the resources and means to do that. What about those who don't? What do they do with their waste? I have said before, and the annual council survey, which is done and confirms the officers to continue with their policy, the administration to continue with their policy, the survey is a self-fulfilling prophecy. The fact that only those people who have used the recycling centre can complete the survey fully means that those who are using it will be positive about their experience. Unfortunately, some would say 50 to 75% of people who can't access that do not use appropriate methods of removing waste, and fly tipping has increased. There is a correlation between reduced opening hours and the difficulty of booking and pre-booking and the limits of 12 visits per household, domestic household, and fly tipping across Derby. Many in frustration, we know, go to other sites, but many others do not do anything which is helpful to our recycling ambitions that we all try to progress. So, it's been a long evening already. I could sort of go on about further on this, but I just want to say that the motion today is the right motion to make sure that not only the council and the officers can do their job effectively and more efficiently, but we enable more residents to recycle more appropriately and reduce the fly tipping with its pungent smells and increased rat sightings in Derby. So, I will urge the council members from all parties to support this motion and make sure that the council resolves to request the council cabinet to reverse this policy and budget decision and ensure that Rainsway Household Waste Recycling Centre is brought back to working at least as effectively and efficiently as before COVID-19 emergency measures were introduced by 1. Reintroducing access to the site to at least pre-pandemic opening hours, 2. Removing the requirement to have access to recycling only through online booking, pre-book slots, and 3. Removing the limit of slots available for domestic household per year. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I urge everybody to support this motion because it's the right thing for the people of Derby and for the work that we are doing in terms of tackling fly tipping and recycling issues.
Thank you, Councillor Dinser. Councillor Bonds, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right?
I'll speak briefly now, please, Mr. Mayor, if that's okay. I'm very happy to second this motion, which I fully support. Unfortunately, fly tipping, antisocial rubbish dumping and thoughtless disposal of household items is a major issue on our streets, as witnessed daily in our wards. This is not restricted to country lanes and back streets. We only have to take a trip down the main arterial routes into our city, and to our shame, we see soiled mattresses, cardboard, split bags, furniture and building rubble. I am not happy for our city to be presented in this way, and tackling these issues is a part of our daily ward work. One of my residents in Abbey has reported literally hundreds, over 300, incidents of fly tipping and thoughtless refuse disposal in the last year. Councillor Dinter has highlighted some of the barriers faced by residents, but I believe this motion, once enacted, will serve to remove one more barrier from residents doing the right thing, which is what we want them to do. It is my view that maintaining the online booking system, limiting visits and chipping away at capacity with the focus on cost savings is a false economy for our city. Furthermore, the suggestion that limiting visits is justified to prevent a small number of folks abusing the system is not an appropriate response to that particular issue. It is a matter of punishing the whole class, is it not, when one pupil forgets their homework? Thank you. I urge you all to support this motion and show commitment to ending the measures that were temporarily implemented due to COVID. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bonds. Councillor Kerr.
Thank you. I would also welcome a review of the current arrangements, but not only for the reasons mentioned, but also considering how people can travel to reach Rainsway at the moment and be received. Some of the items that we should be recycling, we cannot recycle except at Rainsway. And that might be things like pots of paint, it might be electronic equipment, which could be toys, a whole range of stuff that is actually quite small, but we are told should not be going into our black bins. We have to get to Rainsway. Not everybody has the ability to drive or has a car in which to drive. And therefore I'm going to say, at the moment, you're not allowed to walk to Rainsway to deposit a couple of cans of paint as part of a walk that you may be doing along the Riverside Path. And you're not allowed to cycle there with maybe a computer or some toys on the back of your bicycle or in the panniers. These things ought to be enabled because we want everybody to be able to increase those recycling levels, as we had reminded us today that we are not achieving as a city. So as we review the way in which Rainsway works, can we please also make sure that it is accessible to people who do not have a car? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Abt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, Councillor Sal, welcome this motion. I mean, we've discussed it at length on the Communities Commission. I, as a businessman who has a self-drive hire company, find it very embarrassing when I have to tell my customers, if you can't get a self-drive, you take your rubbish to Ashbourne, Ilkeston or Burton. That's a sad thing for me. We up the council tax each year for our residents of the city, and as far as I'm concerned, I think we honour what we're supposed to give them. We're not asking for a great deal. You can get 33,000 people in a Pride Park watching a football game. The pubs are full, the clubs are full, the buses are full. Yet we can't get people to get back to a bit of normality at Rainsway Tip. You know, it's a no-brainer. We've gone through the pandemic. I know it's been difficult and challenging times, but I'd like to think there's a bit of normality coming back into the city of Derby. So I and my group will definitely support this to get in Range Tip open to what it was pre-pandemic. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Prosser.
Thank you. Yesterday I was called by a local resident who asked me to help her get a slot at Range Way. At approximately 70 years of age, she was struggling on the computer to sign up and book a slot. I've spent decades working in IT development and support, and after 30 minutes I was locked out of my account and she still hadn't received the desired result. She also informed me that having rang the phone number on the booking page 6 times, it had not been answered, and she was not inclined to call again. In exasperation, she suggested that the rubbish would be left on the road for the council to collect. She's an honourable, respected member of our frustrated community that must be served better. And my thoughts on the current arrangements at Rangeway are well known. The multiple reports and compiled documents put forward in support of the current scheme are a shameful example of political spin and nonsense. Fly tipping in this city is rocketing. People are travelling miles to go to a recycling centre, including many councillors in this room. Yet this council continues with its ludicrous stance. Let's get the service restored. Let's get a second tip opened as promised by the current leadership, and let's serve the people of this city in the way they deserve and give them what they pay for.
Thank you. Councillor Sheares-Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very briefly, you read a lecture at the start of this meeting about how somebody was very pleased to see Derby, very clean, etc. I wonder what they would have thought had they crossed Abbey Street or Lara Croft Way and gone further into the Arboretum Ward, which the city is part of. Would they not have seen mattresses, all sorts of rubbish dumped on these? And I think maybe, next time I'll ask somebody from out of town to come and have a look so they can write to you and say how pleased they were to see all this rubbish round streets instead of at the tip. And, it's indefensible what this administration is doing. You beggars believe how they try to justify this when you can go to Lascaux, which is, a small sort of village compared to Derby City. Yet they have a site that runs perfectly well. People are queuing up, getting in there, dumping their rubbish, coming out. And yet here we are with this administration. Not only are they making things very, very difficult for ordinary people, but can you imagine some of the sort of EU migrants that we've had in the wards of Arboretum, Normanton Abbey, who struggle to speak the language barely, let alone try to use a computer to book an online slot for this. I honestly, echo everything that's been said about this. Why are we not justifying the council tax increase to, our residents by saying, yes, look, we're improving services for you? By taking this stance, all we're saying to them is we don't really care because it doesn't affect some of the wards that this administration happens to represent. It's only, in deprived wards that this is happening. So I think this administration owes it to the city of Derby to come clean and say, look, we made a mistake, or that we took some measures at a time when it was necessary. Now it's no longer necessary, and we will be going back to the normal procedure of dumping your rubbish there and recycling stuff. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very briefly to say, obviously I agree very much with all the views that have been expressed. I mean, many people I know are unfortunately driving up to Ashbourne, which seems ludicrous when we're trying to encourage people to perhaps use their cars less and create less CO2. But one point I would make is that I hope the Conservative councillors here, I'm sure they are aware, that you cannot possibly begin to think that this is just a problem in certain areas of the city for which in the past some of them have expressed rather disparaging views, because I know for a fact that recently a fridge freezer was left outside the entrance to Woodland School in Allestree, and actually in the entrance to Allestree Park a fridge was dumped. It's happening all over the city. It is a really genuine problem, and I think this is a really genuine plea from people on behalf of the city to make the whole city live up to the description that you gave at the beginning of the meeting, Mr. Mayor, from the visitors to the city. So I do hope the Conservative councillors here will take serious action on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Evening, everybody. We've all heard the mistruths coming from some opposition councillors, So I'd like to start off by dispelling those damaging statements. During COVID, the recycling centre was open with restricted hours, but these have steadily increased over the year, including an additional 1,100 slots being implemented, an increase from May 2020 to July 21 of 76%. Bookings can be made either online, I can do it in 6 minutes, Mr. Prosser, or by the phone, 0333 200 6981, and slots are available within 24 hours of booking. It will be very interesting to see how many of the opposition councillors that are against the booking system have actually used it, so they can pass on our efficiency test to their residents. Council-run bulky waste collections can be booked. These have increased during lockdown and are being used regularly by residents throughout the city. Compact days can be booked, as we've previously said, via neighbourhood boards funding. All of the above points, as Councillor Dinger has said, were in the report presented to the Community Scrutiny Board meeting on the 13th of September. This report also showed that, yes, sadly, national fly tipping incidents and Derby ones increased during the COVID pandemic, but now, after introducing more slots to the booking system and the bulky waste collections, fly tipping has now come down to below pre-COVID levels, and we are working hard to continue this important work. In fact, there's a scheme coming up shortly in Normanton Ward, where I will be working with the councillors' officers to educate residents as to the solutions for their bulky waste disposal. I volunteered to do that last Friday at my meeting in the Street Pride. The online booking system has been a success. 21,300 bookings between the 12th of July and the 15th of September, an average of 328 per day. The 12 visits per year system is proven to be a success. Data shows that the vast majority of Derby and Derbyshire residents have booked only one visit since July 2021. Rightly, the exclusion of trade and business waste users has meant that this system is now only being used as it should be, a household recycling scheme. Visitors to the tip now arrive, empty their rubbish and are on their way home within 10 to 15 minutes rather than sitting what used to be up to a 2-hour queue at peak times. We've even heard that Councillor Graves, I'm sorry he's not here tonight, used the recycling facilities recently, commenting as to how good the system was. Quick, easy and no queuing was a précis of his comments. And we all remember when Councillor Graves and some in his party were against the long queues under the previous scheme, negatively affecting the Elveston and Bolton ward communities. Moving to other considerations, discussions have been taking place with officers to alter the hours and more slots. This will be in relation to the pre-COVID data that showed what days and hours were busy and what were the quiet periods. So in summary, the current booking system works and means that the tip is open to the correct people, not trade waste users. No queuing in or out, which caused chaos at peak times in the past. No queues on the external roads, helping businesses on the industrial park and local traffic users. Bulky waste collections have increased, giving residents who have limited access to Rainsbury Tip help in getting their waste disposed of in a reasonable and accessible way and at an affordable cost. And lastly, if any of the councillors want a lesson how to use the booking system, please feel free to ask me after the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. I have 4 more speakers. That's Councillor Smale, Councillor Repton, Councillor Holmes, Councillor Skelton. I have a very urgent call of nature, and I'm going to adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes. Okay. The order I read out, I think, was Smale, Repton, Holmes and Skelton. Is that correct? I think. Okay, Councillor Smale.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I hope you're feeling a little bit more relieved now. So I would like just to address a few points. Obviously, I was the cabinet member that originally introduced this scheme. I'm very proud of the scheme actually, and I do want to thank officers for the hard work that they have put into making this scheme work. Councillor Pearce has addressed quite a large portion of the issues that were raised. You can book online, and you can book, and I've just checked, you can book for tomorrow at 3:30 p.m, and then you can also book online. I believe Councillor Dinser referred to 20 bags from a contractor from Chaddesden, and I think you actually answered your own question there, was the word contractor. No contractor should be using any of our household waste recycling centres, not just here, but any of them across Derbyshire. The EA will only permit the use for household waste. So if we are finding contractors are disposing waste on our streets, then we need to do some more investigative work with fly tipping from our PPOs. Councillor Kerr, you quite rightly raised some recommendations that I believe that you did bring to Cabinet. I think it might be November last year. That I believe Councillor Pearce just spoke to me that they are looking at a system where people can bring waste by the cycle. So I think there might be a little bit more issues with regards to walking, but they will look into it. But it is not something that can be completely ruled out. We also stood on this as a manifesto pledge, the Conservative group, and I think that when we went out and spoke to local people, that access has not been an issue when it comes to booking online. And there is a bulky waste scheme that we can use, and this scheme in particular is benchmarked against other councils in the UK. We're not the first council in the UK to bring in booking schemes. Actually, I would ask to speak to your colleagues in Cardiff City Council, the Labour leadership there. Actually, they gave us some really good insights on how to. I know we're in Derby, but you like to keep chastising this administration for what has been deemed as a successful project. This scheme will stay here whilst we're as an administration, and we quite proudly stood on this as a manifesto pledge. There is some that we'll always look to improve the scheme, and we will always look to take advice and any opinions or any thoughts that might come from other councillors. But this scheme will be staying put. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Repton.
Yes, I'll be brief, Mr. Mayor, because many contributions have already been made, but there are currently too many barriers to enable residents to properly dispose of their rubbish or to recycle as they want and need. These barriers must be removed, or we'll continue to pay the price, literally and metaphorically, by large increases in fly tipping throughout the city. The costs are not just financial, they are environmental and are negatively affecting our health and well-being. The current policies are rubbish, not fit for purpose, and must be binned. Support the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's just a few points. Councillor Outlaw mentioned some of his customers' access to the Rangeway facility and apparently how hard it was. Well, I don't think it is. Councillor Smale has just said that he checked. Well, I've just spent a couple of minutes checking, and there's 14 slots available tomorrow, 17 slots available Friday, 37 on Saturday, and 38 on Sunday. I'm assuming that will go through the next week as well. And these aren't just, slots, awkward slots or inconvenient slots. These are a range of time slots during the working day and also outside of traditional working hours for many people as well. So the system is there, the system is working, and slots are available. Councillor Repton on, how we actually can work as councillors to reduce fly tipping and actually allow residents' services to get rid of their household waste. Of course, this system is working. I've used it a couple of times already since the booking system was put into place, and or maybe 2 or 3 times. And another manifesto commitment is, of course, the compactor days. And that's something which is in Councillor Repton's gift, or partly, with regards to his fellow councillors, Councillor Grimmadale and Martin, as the neighbourhood board. we're facilitating that so boards can actually bring that to residents and arrange local compactor days. And I know that they're very popular in my ward of Mickleover, and my fellow councillors will be looking to book some of those in soon for the benefit of local residents. And the final point I will make, Councillor Prosser, and I think, apologies if this isn't correct, Councillor Kerr, but I believe I've read something in the media or press or about elderly residents. Now, we all have elderly populations within our wards, some more than others, but again, Mickleover, there is quite a large amount of elderly residents. You know, we're all living longer, and that's a great thing. I'll make this point that we're going to be a gigabit city soon, you know, and that is a fantastic thing. We're going to have full fibre to almost all premise, so both residential and business. And the opportunities and the digital transformation for this city are going to be immense. But with that, we need to work really hard to ensure that we don't create a digital divide. And we as a collective group of councillors are going to have to work really hard as this progresses, because what we don't want to do is leave people behind that don't necessarily have the ability, either physically in terms of connectivity to their home, to be able to book online. Now, we have got a system where they can ring up, and I think that's a good thing, and that's going to be for the foreseeable. But in the future, many of these systems, many of these booking systems, whether it be, this is just one example, or access to services, are going to be increasingly online in a connected society. That is going to happen. So we need to be cognizant of that and basically work with local residents and communities to make sure that we're ahead of the game, and we're all going to play a part in that. So I think, you know, in summary, I get the opposition don't want this to continue. I see that they want to reverse it. I think that'd be a retrograde step. The Conservative group believe that this is working and there's support there. We've proven that there's slots available, the system is working, you know, and there's no reason to actually change direction here, and I fully support Councillor Smell's contribution.
Councillor Skelton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think people need to realise that one size does not fit all, and I think that's what we've got at the moment. I think it would be far better if we actually went to some sort of a hybrid system where, yes, there are still those slots available to be booked, but for some days or parts of days, there needs to be, you know, just a turn-up service where people can do that, because for whatever reason they cannot commit, whether it's the nature of the work that they do. They may well not know what shifts they're doing from sort of, you know, 48 hours or even less in some cases. We just need to actually improve it. We're not about destroying what we have, because for some people, you know, booking is fantastic and it works for them, but it's not for everybody. Another way, obviously, that we need to help residents is with compactor days, which Councillor Holmes mentioned. I would just like to read out an email, part of an email I received yesterday, because we in my ward were asking, can we actually have a restart the compactor days that we had? So it says, in relation to compactor days, these remain on hold. The neighbourhood team have no update at this time when or if they will return. So that certainly needs sorting out. You know, we've been told, you know, that, oh, it's fantastic, and we've had, you know, Councillor Holmes saying that it's up and running, and he's going to be doing some for Mickleover. Well, at the moment, he's going to be disappointed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have had the privilege of using the new booking system at Rainsway. I have to say, it did work very well, and it was as smooth as anything. And actually, at the first visit, I did see Jonathan Smell there. It was very good, I can't deny it. However, I do feel we should have a dual system, a compromise. We could have a free Friday, where every Friday, no booking on Fridays, so people can go. So they know on a Friday, for instance, they could use the facility. They might have to queue, they might not. That's one option we could look at. But in the meantime, I do think we're disadvantaging too many residents in Derby. I've seen many disruptors over the last 20 years where the council have implemented things resulting in friction across the spectrum of what we do. Most things we do are good, but this is a typical disruptor, resulting in friction, and we need to address it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers before we go to Councillor Carr?
It's just a very quick point. I see several people have talked about having some sort of hybrid system. Can I point out that the part of the motion, part 2, says uses the word only, so none of this motion would preclude, if it was passed, going to a hybrid system where some slots are pre-booked and others are not. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Dinser, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for everybody's contributions. Clearly, there is a divide between the ruling administration and the opposition members. I don't think anybody denies, and the survey, as I said, is a self-fulfilling prophecy on this, that the booking system does work for a number of people. And it's easy to use if you are digital savvy. There's no denying that. And this motion does not say that we get rid of it. It talks about enhancing and increasing the efficiency and effectiveness and accessibility of the recycling facilities by all the residents. It talks about the difficulty for those who cannot access, use, or are able to reuse the resources of the digital world that is being created for all of us and is being held on strongly by the administration on this particular initiative. We don't doubt any of that, but there have been many examples given of how the barriers and the obstructor, as Councillor Evans just mentioned, is the initiative currently in place. So I hope that the ruling administration do not still want to have a gap and a distance from what is being asked by other opposition group members who have spoken eloquently about why we need to change the system. And the resolution is to ask Council Cabinet to seriously consider how we can make our common aspiration of improving recycling, having a green, clean and flight-free environment for all our neighbourhoods, for all our residents to enjoy. That's what we need, and we want to be constructive to help move this on. It worked during a pandemic, and it works for those positively, for those who experience and can use digital facilities, but it doesn't work for everybody. So it's about not getting rid of it, but it's making sure that more people can access the facilities through not having to pre-book. That is in the motion. It's very clear. It's what's enhancing and actually increasing accessibility. Surely we can all sign up to that. Please support this motion. It's the right thing to do for the council and for the people of Derby.
All those in favour, please show. You got that? Yeah, I'm convinced. The motion is carried. To item 14, which is the universal credit uplift, to be moved by Councillor Peakfield and seconded by Councillor Shanker. Councillor Peakfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Derby currently has over 11,000 universal credit claimants, according to the Office of National Statistics. Now, I could stand here and give you lots of statistics this evening, all of which I've researched, and I could speak passionately about people's experiences, but it is not my lived experience. It's the people who are claiming universal credit, it's their words that you need to hear this evening. So, as we approach the end of September, and those 11,000 claimants in Derby who will be losing they're £20 a week, I want you to hear this evening in this chamber their worries, anxieties and their fears. The first example that was sent to me when I asked residents in my ward of Sinn Fin how they were worried, were they affected by the cut? What were their concerns? They said, we have only been claiming universal credit since June, and we rely on every penny. We get bedroom taxed £50 for a box room, and I have to pay for the dentist and prescriptions. My partner works full-time on a minimum wage, so to lose £86 a month plus the national insurance increase is causing anxiety and sleepless nights. We have a 5-year-old who requires new winter clothing, and the bills will be increasing with winter approaching. Another resident replied to me, I lost my job due to COVID, so now I'm a single mum to 3 children and on benefits. This month I lose the extra payment, and it did come in handy. My daughter has just started college. Her bus fare alone costs half of what I'm losing. So I've had to purchase new clothes, PE kits, stationery. Children aren't cheap. They eat and they grow. To lose this money is going to hit us hard. Another replied to me, the £20 per week really helps me and my 4 children, especially as I only receive money for the first 3 of them and no child maintenance. It stretches a long way in helping with food and electricity, or if one of my children gets ill and I need to buy medicine. I've always worked. I am not a benefit scrounger. I'm looking for schoolwork or work from home as I have no childcare. The extra £20 a week was a godsend to my family. My rent has gone up by £130 a month, and now losing the extra bit is going to be a huge struggle. Another story from a resident. My universal credit has to cover 2 people. My son is autistic and a fussy eater. He's in education, so he can't claim. I have IBS, so food has to be homemade. And that extra money was brilliant. It really helped. But now it's going. I really don't know what I'm going to do. I'm a single mum. My son is 22, but has a mental age of a lot younger. We receive no help from his father. Now that they're taking the extra money away, I will get just under £500 to cover my rent, which is £379 a month, council tax, bills, and food for 2 people for a month. This affects my mental health, wondering how I'm going to struggle and how I'm going to pay for things. From another resident, I lost my job in the pandemic. Money is so tight as my debts just snowballed after the job loss. I seem to be absolutely disregarded, even though I have severe mental health and fibromyalgia. Any extra pennies I can get makes a huge difference. I'm even in debt with school for my daughter's school dinners and extra care sessions while I try to get back into work. Another example. In October, as we lose the uplift, the energy prices from most suppliers will be going up. People on prepayment plans will feel this hitting their monthly budget. Surely, keeping the uplift would reduce the need for council to provide emergency utility credit funding to struggling benefit recipients. The uplift was just enough for me to comfortably pay for my utilities. Before, I would have to decide whether to top up my gas for heating or my electric and use the kettle to wash and clean up. I'm sorry, but can you imagine having to choose between which utility to pay, gas or electric? You can't afford both. I have 2 more examples for you, and they get worse. I'm struggling financially after paying for my daughter's school uniform, and I only have food for today's tea. I'm a single mum to an 8-year-old. I have accessed the food bank in previous years, but my mental health has deteriorated, and I'm unable to get to town now. I usually have bits in the freezer, but even that has run out. And finally, from a local resident that Councillor Shanker, Councillor West and myself know very well, who recently lost her beloved husband. I'm worried about the drop in money. I'm still trying to get my head around the reduction after my husband passed away, and now it's going down again. I go to a bereavement group once a week. It's only £2, but I'm not sure if I can afford that once the money goes. I also worry about bus fares. It's really scary looking at what you get and what you're supposed to pay with it. Council tax is still high. I've applied for a hardship fund, but you're made to feel like a scrounger. Like I should move. This is my home. It's where I have all my memories. I couldn't cope with moving. I feel like it's a lot to get your head round, and there seems to be no compassion anymore. I could have gone on with more and more examples, Mr. Mayor. It's heartbreaking. All we're asking this evening is that we send a letter and that we ask the government to keep the £20 uplift and to make it permanent. So please, with those desperately sad words, I move this motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Beatfield. Councillor Shanker, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right to speak later?
I'll reserve my right to speak later, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Ralston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to say, I completely recognise the individual cases that you spoke about there have been very, very emotive, and we need to support those most vulnerable, absolutely. And I'd encourage those that you've spoken about this evening to be put in contact with the welfare reform team at the City Council, who work directly with them to ensure that they're in receipt of all the relevant benefits and support and give them additional guidance. I'll pass that number on to you afterwards. The devil is in the detail, as you rightly point out. The Chancellor extended a £20 per week uplift as universal credit for 6 months. What you failed to point out is it was completely and utterly related to the COVID pandemic and has always been temporary. Officers at the Council and our partners have been forewarning residents for over 6 months to make them fully aware that the funds were a temporary uplift and helping them to prepare to manage their monies more effectively. This uplift, however, was a way of supporting the local residents most in need during the pandemic to deal with any additional pressures that they may have faced, many of whom were furloughed. The furlough scheme has helped thousands of residents in Derby remain in employment. However, it's quite possible that the city may see an increase in redundancies. We should also welcome and recognise the opportunities coming to Derby in the near future. For example, Smart Park, which announced in the last few days potentially 5,000 new jobs to the city. Indeed, there are new and arising challenges such as the national insurance increase, pressures on residents from increasing living costs such as fuel prices, amongst other things. And I'd therefore like to propose an amendment which will be circulated. This amendment tackles new and emerging issues rather than taking an opportunity to attack the government and recognises the support already given. The thrust of the amendment details that we request the 20% increase in universal credit to be replaced with an alternative to address the current issues such as increases in fuel prices, general living costs and the most vulnerable across the city. Mr. Mayor, would you like me to talk on that amendment now?
Can we just be sure that everybody's got it?
Yes.
Has everybody got that amendment? Okay, Councillor Ralston, you have the right to. Lucy, they haven't got that. I understand this amendment has been looked at by the monitoring officer and approved as being proper. Councillor Ralston, would you like now to move the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Universal credit system should be there to help move people out of poverty and deprivation and support economic growth, helping people to help themselves. I cannot support the previous motion that was simply politically motivated and takes the opportunity to use emotive words such as "we demand an increase on universal credit." This city needs to be heard by government, and this motion would bring, this amendment would bring a huge national, the previous motion would have brought a huge national policy which would create a major pressure on the national government of approximately £5 to £6 billion a year nationally, a significant challenge for a government, especially post-pandemic. The government has supported many businesses to maintain jobs throughout the pandemic, and we cannot keep spending monies that we do not have. It is now time for us to support our residents more proactively, to give them support, to help themselves, and to stop the reliance on handouts. As a council, we should focus on the third part of this and final part of the previous recommendation, which explains that we need to continue to work alongside our partner organisations. This will give the support and the hand up into a more prosperous financial position. It's important that we respond to a city working with the city and partnership arrangements with the third sector to wrap around support for everybody. Indeed, our welfare reform team with individuals who deal with individuals on a weekly basis have alone since January given one-to-one support to 361 individuals to help them with things like digital poverty, digital support, budgeting support, along with direct funding awards of 730 individuals of white goods totalling over £200,000. We need to recognise that there is a finite amount of funding from government, and it's important that we as a city work with our amazing partners we have across the city who have done some amazing and fantastic work. We have an active poverty commission who, alongside Councillor Williams, have been addressing the fundamental issues and the causes and what the causes are of poverty in our city and addressing them directly. Community Action support all who, along with Food for Thought Alliance, continues to work with volunteers across the city and support our most vulnerable. Now is the time to work together. This city and its residents should not be reliant on national government funding, which is not in our control. This would be a huge policy decision for the government and immense financial implications, and we should be concentrating on what we can do here and now as a local authority and help tackle the causes and not just deal with the consequences.
Councillor Ralston, I have to stop you there. Tolerant last time. Dare not do
Thank
it
you,
again.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Is that amendment seconded? Councillor Smale, you're seconding. Do you wish to speak now or reserve your right? Thank you. Did I see any other hands? Councillor Peafield.
If I can speak to the amendment, Mr. Mayor. This amendment is pure semantics. It's quite telling, really, that the Conservative Party have rewritten the original motion into softer words and removed any reference to fault and where it clearly lies. For that alone, we will be rejecting this amendment, but not least for Councillor Ralston's reference to people's reliance on handouts, which is utterly shameful. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Skelton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Liberal Democrat group will be voting against this amendment. I think, as has just been pointed out, some of the language and assumptions used, it's quite clear that some people have never experienced life on benefits, unlike some of us who have done. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers on the amendment? Move to Councillor Smale.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, I think Councillor Ralston explained some of the work that's going on in the background. We understand the pressures that are coming ahead with regards to the gas energy prices, and this was one of the fundamental reasons why we wanted to amend it, so that we could seek reassurance from the Chancellor of the Exchequer so that we could get an alternative scheme that could be put in its place to help fuel poverty. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Those in favour of the amendment, please show. Those against the amendment, please show. The amendment is lost, so we revert to the substantive motion. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I suppose, like many people in this room, I do understand the Conservatives' attempt to amend this motion in a way that takes any political responsibility from the government for their policy on benefits. But obviously that has failed, and I'm pleased to say it has. But I have been very angered by Councillor Ralston's speech, because I think it's worth remembering that actually what we have had and should have in this country is a social security system, not a welfare system. So the idea that people who are in receipt of benefits when they become unemployed are having handouts is deeply insulting. I know two friends of mine at the beginning of the pandemic. One, his business went bust. He spent 40 years employing people in this city, paying thousands and thousands of pounds in tax, creating jobs, left with nothing. And after 40 years of paying in, he was expected to live on £70 a week. And another who has equally been a dutiful employee in loads of different very socially worthy jobs, also found himself temporarily unemployed on £70 a week. Now the problem is, as your own Nigel Mills said recently on television, I saw him saying, that actually, £70 a week is too low. It's just too low for anybody to live on. So, this patronising idea that we should move to just topping it up a little bit with a little bit of a handout for fuel prices and general living costs is deeply insulting. Now, that motion has been rejected, that amendment has been rejected, so that's good. So very quickly then, what I did want to say originally was that the motion calls for partner organisations to provide help and assistance wherever possible. Well, one aspect of that, I think, is people, living in these very stricken conditions means that people often suffer mental health issues. And as Nadine mentioned, someone who said that it was affecting their mental health. So I did want to bring this evening a question on mental health to the council, but I was told by the monitoring officer that it was the same question that I brought earlier in the year. I disagree with that, because this time I was asking the council cabinet member to ensure that he promoted the mental health services in the city, whereas before I was asking for them to be enhanced. And anybody knows the difference between service construction and marketing knows that that is actually a different thing. So I just use this opportunity to say that whilst we know that people need help with bills and help to live on this very tiny amount that the Conservatives expect them to, I would also hope that help will be extended to things like mental health services, and I trust that Councillor Webb will be working on the promotion of those services, which we do have in the city, to those people, in fact, all the residents in the city. Thank you.
Councillor Lind.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, who conducted an impact analysis, state that families with children will be disproportionately impacted. They estimate that universal credit cut alone could force 500,000 people, almost half of them children, into poverty. Hard-pressed Derby families will be less worse off when the government ends the uplift of universal credit next month. Whilst it's right for the government to say they want to support people back into work as we come out of this crisis, it is working families that make up over half, around 60% of families who will be affected by this awful Tory cut. Liberal Democrats recently opposed this cut in Parliament, and we will be supporting this motion today. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Yeah, Councillor Shanker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Having heard and listened to Councillor Peatfield propose this motion, with real life stories, with real life impact statements, and with real life consequences, I would have hoped that we do not need to prolong this debate, and that each and every one of us here today can support this motion and help some of our most, in fact, 10, 11,000 of our most vulnerable families who need that help. Families that are working very hard to make their life better, but with that extra £20 a week would make a significant difference to their lives. Families that have been hit hard, the hardest since austerity began 10 years ago. Families that are disproportionately hit the hardest when VAT is increased. Families that will be disproportionately hit hard with a 10% hike in national insurance contributions. Families that will be hit hard with the inevitable increase in energy prices. And families that will be hit the hardest with the predicted increase in inflation that is likely to exceed 3%, well above the government's own targets. That's why I'm not surprised 6 Conservative previous Secretaries of State for Work and Pensions have encouraged the government to make this universal credit uplift permanent. And having heard Councillor Ralston speaking earlier, it's obvious there's messages coming from the leadership, the administration here, or in Westminster to try and convince Conservative councillors, Conservative members of Parliament that this increase in universal credit is just not affordable. I'll read a few facts out which, again, you can make your own mind up, but I hope would convince you that it is affordable. But whether that's enough to convince you, we'll only tell when we go to the vote. But let me just go back to Councillor Ralston's speech as well. She says, wearing a mask, we were in a pandemic. I think that sums it up. Families are still feeling the pinch. The £20 uplift will indeed cost around £6 billion a year. A huge sum of money. But let's not forget, literally the whole of that £6 billion will most likely be spent pretty much straight away in local economies, directly helping over 6 million families and local businesses. The cost of the furlough scheme indeed topped £68 billion, and that was to the end of August, so that's probably higher by now. Track and trace, which across government has been recognised as adding little value, costing a staggering £37 billion. The total value of government-backed loans and grants, circa £92 billion during the crisis, and the taxpayers already believed to be on the hook for £26 billion of credit and fraud losses. Let's not forget £2 billion being spent on unusable PPE in the medical field. I could go on. 250 million on Boris's little pet yacht project. 2.6 million on the press office at number 10 Downing Street. So don't anybody think there isn't money in the system to look after the most vulnerable in our society. There is. It just needs the will to make sure that happens. So we can send a strong and united message in a nice letter to the Chancellor from the leader of this council with the backing of the whole of this We Love You chamber, calling for him to level up with the families across our city and across the country. Or we can shy away from doing that, shy away from doing the right thing. The choice is ours. We will be asking for a recorded vote on this motion, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr.
Thank you. I just want to make 2 very brief points. One is that if you are on universal credit and you're only on universal credit briefly, it's not as challenging as if you are on universal credit for a long period of time. like the example that was mentioned of somebody who used to be able to go to their freezer and find food in it. Once you've been on universal credit for a long time, you find that the freezer is empty. And that also goes with the fact that your child has grown out of their shoes, they've grown out of their coat, you desperately want to have those new things that as things break in the house, you cannot replace them. And that is the reality of being on benefits for a long time rather than just for a short period of time. The second thing I want to mention is that while we write our strong and united message from the council to the government, we actually, the leader of the council, may write on his own behalf, or maybe on his group's behalf, and mention the other points that he wished to make to the Chancellor. I have no objection to him writing and making those points, because actually whatever help we can give to people matters, but the help they really need is that more flexible help and longer term help. Thank you.
Councillor Lonsdale and Councillor Willoughby. Councillor Lonsdale.
I've just done a quick Google search. A third of people on universal credit are in work. They're not receiving handouts. They're receiving the necessities of living, and they're working so hard to try and survive. If we take this money away from them, they can't survive. There is no doubt in my mind that this is a good motion, that we should be sending representing our people to the government in this way.
Thank you. Councillor Willoughby.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. As Councillor Shanker says, I'll talk from behind my mask because I know there's still a pandemic on. I know that many residents in my own ward of Derwent will be seriously affected by the ending of this £20 uplift. And I know that, myself and many other councillors' mailboxes will only increase with cases similar to what Councillor Peatfield shared earlier. So therefore, to show real support and backing behind my residents in the ward that I'm very proud to represent, the Derwent ward, I'll be very much supporting this motion. And thanks for that wonderful speech, Councillor Shanker, as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peatfield, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All of the residents that I've quoted tonight have received all of the welfare support that they can possibly apply for. I don't need the number from you, thank you, Councillor Ralston. I know it all too well, having run a food bank for a year. The uplift may have been related to COVID, but it was always too little in the first place. And Councillor Ralston in particular, your response is reminiscent of another out-of-touch leader who was oblivious to the struggle when she said, "Let them eat cake." We have furlough ending, energy bills rising, petrol costs rising, food costs rising, national insurance rising, inflation rising. The council tax was hiked in April, and with a £20 million gap in the council's funding, can we expect another council tax hike next year? And you want to take away £86 a month from the people who are struggling the most. £20 a week may only be, I don't know, a few bottles of wine or the cost of a takeaway for some. But for 11,000 Derby residents, it's a matter of electricity or gas, warmth or cold, food or hunger. So please, dig deep, offer our residents the compassion that they are crying out for and support this motion. Mr. Mayor, I ask for a recorded vote.
Thank you. Have we got a record? 10? Fine. Thank you. Yes, it will be a recorded vote, and I'll ask Alex to do the usual thing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I read members' names, will you indicate whether you are for or against the motion as it is printed in your agenda bundle, please? So firstly, Councillor Atwell.
For, please, Alex.
Thank you. Councillor Barker. Councillor Bettany. Councillor Bonser.
For, please.
Councillor Kerr. Councillor Carr. Councillor Cooper.
Abstain.
Councillor Dinter.
4.
Councillor Evans. 4. Councillor Eyre. Councillor Froggatt. Councillor Grimmerdale.
Abstain.
Councillor Hessel. Councillor Alison Holmes, please. Councillor Matthew Holmes. Councillor Hussain.
4.
Councillor Ingle. Councillor Jennings.
Abstain.
Councillor Jangir Khan.
4.
Councillor Shiraz Khan. Councillor Cuss. Councillor Linden.
4.
Councillor Lonsdale. Councillor Martin.
4.
Councillor McChrystal.
Abstain.
Councillor Nater. Councillor Nawaz. Councillor Pandy. Councillor Patterson. Councillor J. Pearce. Councillor T. Pearce. Councillor Beatfield.
4.
Councillor Adrian Pegg. Councillor Potter.
Abstain.
Councillor Bolter. Councillor Prosser. Councillor Repton. Councillor Ralston. Councillor Sandhu. Councillor Shankar. Councillor Skelton.
4.
Councillor Smale. Councillor Testro. Councillor Webb. Councillor West.
4.
Councillor Williams. Councillor Willoughby. And finally, the Mayor, Councillor Wood.
Abstain. That motion is carried with no votes against. Item 15, tackling knife crime, to be moved by Councillor Atwell and seconded by Councillor Dinser. Councillor Atwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and fellow members of the Council. This motion speaks a million words for itself, and I hope it can be unanimously supported across the Chamber as an absolute debt to the people that have seated us all here today. Knife crime is barbaric, inhumane and atrocious act, and on many occasions in recent years we are seeing a disastrous increase in the devastating impact it has on families and society at large. Since 2014, a national increase of over 90% is indeed alarming, disturbing and distressing to say the least. In Derbyshire's terms, a 300% increase in knife crime came in 7 years has been reported. 291 such crimes in 2012-2013 and a staggering 874 in 2019-2020. It is definitely very much a problem on our own streets and our wards and communities. Sometimes the scars are physical, sometimes emotional, sometimes psychological, and sadly on too many occasions they have been beyond reprehension and beyond comprehension, where a life or many lives are lost in a flash, and having a devastating impact, or ending not just the life of the victim, but shattering and permanently destroying the lives of many others. It is recognised that the battle against knife crime has spanned over decades, with tragic happenings such as those of Stephen Lawrence, Demiola Taylor, Lee Rigby, Lord Nigel Jones, Stephen Timms MP, and of course Joe Cox MP, to mention a few, but not to forget those that have occurred locally and elsewhere in the region and country, all impacted by knife crime. A House of Commons report on knife crime statistics reported that in the year ending March 2020, over 46,000 incidents had been recorded in England and Wales as crimes involving either knives or other sharp objects. The actual figure is going to be a lot higher, as we know a high percentage of crimes go unreported. That figure was 24,000 incidents in 2014. Mr. Mayor, I could continue talking endlessly on why we should all support this motion, as even this effort is but a small commitment to the bigger fight against knife crime. A multi-agency approach from every society shaping organisations such as the Council is integral in this battle, and we have the power to take part in the battle tonight by supporting this motion. There is an absolute need for continued and renewed commitment to not only help in dealing with disease in our society, but to reassure and safeguard our own communities here in Derby. By shaping the future of our society for years to come, let's do the right thing in Derby and our communities and support this knife crime. Mr. Mayor, when this motion is debated, please, I would like to call for a minute's silence for the victims of all knife crime throughout the whole of the UK. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Smale. Actually, Councillor Dinsey, you have the right to speak now. I'll reserve the right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought you were going to forget me there for a minute.
I forget you.
I second the motion and reserve my right to speak later. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smale.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, the Conservative group will be, of course, supporting this motion, and I think we all agree with the sentiments that you put there, Councillor Atwell. And just for give some backdrop, I want to discuss some of the things that what we will be doing as a City Council and what we have done historically, and how we can all work together as all the parties and all the councillors together to help reduce this evil crime. So managing knife crime, community safety is working to explore opportunities and look at how we can work together to deal with complexities related to knife crime. This is a cross-council approach, and we are set to launch a new serious youth violence strategy that is being developed in line with a place-based risk approach adopted by our children's services, and obviously I will be working with Councillor Williams on that. The City Council meets frequently with Derbyshire Police at a strategic level to discuss and agree on all our partnership options and projects. We are an active partner with our policing colleagues in reviewing all knife crime related incidents on a weekly basis. So preventing knife crime. We commission several pieces or services as an example of Drop the Knife, and I think you would have all been recently or historically heard of Drop the Knife, which is an intensive programme of mentoring and engagement with individuals who are of high risk of committing knife-related offences. We also work and coordinate efforts with our Youth Offending Service in early intervention and prevention of knife crime-related offences to reduce and divert juveniles entering the criminal justice system. We are now looking to expand our provision post-COVID. Now, pre-pandemic, back into the schools, we used to provide a universal provision such as Your Choices and Switch Up by the Salt Mines Theatre Company. I would really recommend councillors here to go along to these salt mine theatre companies that they go into the schools, and when they do go back into our schools, I'll be happy to invite councillors to go and see these in their respective wards. Both of these programmes were universally welcomed and appreciated by the schools to tackle knife crime and put a strong emphasis on to dropping the knife. Detecting knife crime. We have invested in the continual improvement of our city CCTV systems. Image quality, zoom capability and colour rendition both day and night have significantly improved. This combined with an active monitoring by highly skilled and professional operators are instrumental in capturing images that can be used by the courts to identify offenders and bring them to justice. We will, of course, continue to work with the Police and Crime Commissioner and the public to provide the safest possible city. So this group will be supporting the motion, and I believe Councillor Potter will be discussing some ideas that come from Crime Stoppers. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Potter, I think your speech has just been made for you, but please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it's always good to have support. What I take from this motion is a number of principles. Firstly, to reduce the fear of knife crime. Secondly, to be able to speak of concerns. And thirdly, to be safe to do so. I just want to share some figures with you now from Crime Stoppers, the national organisation. Last year there was 193 reports to Crime Stoppers on knife and sharp object crime. This year alone there's been 79. Now these are up till July this year, so that's only going to increase. Why do people phone Crime Stoppers and not the police? Quite simple. Crime Stoppers is totally independent. They are the honest broker. They promise and guarantee 100% anonymity to anybody who speaks to them. A lot of people won't speak to the police, but they'll speak to Crime Stoppers. Now, Crime Stoppers also have an operational arm, and for some time now they've been running Operation Fearless, which is concentrating on gang and knife crime. Indeed, in our own city, we've had Operation Rolo, which is a spin-off of Operation Fearless. What I would say is this: when discussing knife crime, please don't forget Crime Stoppers. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other speakers before I go to Councillor Dinser? Okay, Councillor Dinser.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I welcome the support, I think, from all parts of the council chamber, because I think this motion proposed by Councillor Electoral is something that touches all of us. And as the previous Peace and Crime Commissioner for Derbyshire, I am too well aware of all the work that the police do in partnership with the City Council and other organisations, and how that can have an impact, including the National Operations Sector and Project ZOW, which has been running in our schools to raise concerns, the dangers of carrying weapons and knives, the importance of sharing the concerns, as mentioned by Councillor Potter and Councillor previous speaker as well. So it is really something that we need to double our efforts on, because the reality is, with all the current partnership working, all the good work that Councillor Smale just highlighted in terms of what we are doing, what we plan to do, the fact is, too many people, and especially too many young people, still feel they need to carry a knife or a weapon to protect themselves. The reason in conferences that I've actually facilitated in the past is that they don't trust the authorities, whether it's the police or other organisations, to protect them, so they feel they need to protect themselves. The Knife Angel, which the City Council, the Cathedral, myself as the previous Peace and Crime Commissioner, enabled to come to Derby and trigger a conversation and an awareness of the negative impacts of knife possession and use. Only today, or this week, or last week, there was a sentence meted out to an offender who had attacked PC Reed in 2019, where unprovoked and unnoticed or unaware, he attacked a police officer doing their duty across the face, and the police officer will continue to carry those scars for the rest of their life. The emotional impact that Councillor Atwell talked about is massive and will continue. The physical impact that PC Reed shared, that his grandchildren will always ask, what happened to your face? There are many sad examples of that. And we need to redouble our efforts, continue to do as accounted by Councillor Smell what the Council is already doing. But I think this motion is talking about how do we enhance that. And one of the things we can do is start a conversation about how initiatives like the operations that the police do, the council do, but also the Knife Angel, which did trigger interest and also attraction into the city about positive ways of dealing with issues like knife crime. We need to do that, and I hope that we can get unanimous support for this resolution proposed by Councillor Atwell, because it's the right thing to do to help encourage people to come forward and ask for help, rather than feel that they've got to look after themselves and the authorities can't do that for them. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Atwell, you have the right to sum up. I'm conscious that you did ask for a minute's silence. I'll put that to the Council after we've taken the vote. Okay, so if you'd like to sum up now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like to welcome Councillor Smell's contribution, very heartfelt, and across to all the parties. This is nothing to do with politics, it's about doing the right thing for the city residents, because we all know somebody somewhere along the line that has been in a horrendous situation regarding knife crime. So, you know, with what we're going to do to take this forward, I appreciate and I strongly am heartfelt by all the comments made. Thank you, Councillor Dinser, for seconding this motion, and thank you, everybody, for all your support.
Those in favour of the motion? I believe that to be unanimous and carried. There was a suggestion that we have a moment's silence. Is that proposal seconded? Yeah. Okay, those in favour? Okay. Don't think there's any against. in which case we'll stand, as we did at the beginning, for a minute's silence. Thank you. Please take your seats. That brings us to the end of the formal business of this evening's meeting. I would like to express thanks to the people the officers particularly, who've made this meeting possible. I know at times we've been too cold and at other times been too hot. That proves you can't please all of the people all of the time. Let's hope we can get back into our proper chamber for the next meeting, where we'll feel at home. I think there's quite a few councillors who've been elected who've never been to a council meeting in that chamber, and it's high time we did. If the House of Commons can do it, so can Derby City Council. Okay.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Brings the business of this evening's meeting to a close. Thank you to all those watching online, and thank you to councillors, officers and members of the public here at the Derby Loves You venue. I will see you all again in November, probably a lot before then. Thanks very much indeed.